there it goes. This is macroeconomics, chapter 15. We'll be talking about unemployment. All right. Well, you saw in the beginning of the video, the lady was going around surveying businesses. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the same agency that's in charge of measuring unemployment, inflation also measures unemployment. And what they do is they conduct two separate surveys. So one to businesses, like that lady was doing, and they're looking at payroll data. So when they say 30,000 jobs have been created this month, that's from that survey. But when they report the unemployment statistic, that 7.5 as of April 2013, that's from a separate survey. And that's from calling households, 60,000 households each month. They survey and ask this question. In the past month, did you work for pay? Okay, so people who answer yes, what can we call those people? Or what category do they fall into? Employed. If they answer no, what's the next question they need to ask? Have you been looking for a job? In the past month? If they answer yes, who are these people? It could be frictionally unemployed, but these are the people that the government considers unemployed. And whenever you see this word now on a quiz or a test, you should think officially unemployed, because that's the official definition. So somebody who's not working right now but is currently searching for a job. Okay, if they say no to this question, it could be a discouraged worker. Or do you remember when Forrest said at the beginning when we asked the question, who are the unemployed, he gave the example of stay-at-home parents? Maybe it's not that they gave up on their job search, but maybe they have made a conscious decision. I'm not working right now because I'm going to take care of the kids at home. So it could be, they have stayed home for a reason. And I'll just put another example of stay-at-home parents. But for whatever reason, if they're not looking for a job, we consider them not in the labor force. All right, so remember, to be officially unemployed, according to the government, in order to be counted in that 7.5%, they have to have answered no to the first question and then yes to the second question. Now, they actually ask more questions than that. For example, if you own your own business or if you're part of a family business, if you've worked so many hours and haven't gotten paid, they still count you as employed. But for this class, just remember what we talked about here. In real life, they would ask some more questions. So let's come over here to our PowerPoint. Make sure that we've got these definitions down. All right. If you have worked for pay in the last month, you answer yes to that first question, you are considered employed by our government. Again, officially unemployed, that means you are looking for a job here. The idea is that you will, since you are looking for a job, that you eventually will find a job and that you're part of the labor force. For people who are not looking for a job and not working right now, again, in a separate category, not in the labor force at all. So if we were to go back to our original list, and I'm going to use a different color this time and say, who are the officially unemployed? Can we say people without a job? No, it depends, right? If they're looking or not. Disabled. Are they officially unemployed? If we're assuming that they're, disabled to the point that they cannot work, I know some disabled people, it just depends on the severity, right? they can still work. But if it's to the point where, maybe they're institutionalized, or they can't find a job, or they're not looking, or not unable to work, then they're not officially unemployed. Okay, older people, I can't remember who said this, but if you were thinking of somebody who was retired, an elderly person, and they have retired on purpose, are they going to be officially unemployed? No, because they're not going to be looking for a job. So teenagers and children. Whoever said this, were y'all thinking of people under 16? I know we can have teenagers older than 16, but if you were thinking of people under 16, you're not working yet. Stay-at-home parents, officially unemployed. No. Veterans? Okay, depends, right? If they're looking for a job or not. Okay, somebody who we would consider lazy, not looking for a job, kind of bumming around at home. Okay, look at all these people who are left out of the official unemployment rate. Because the government says if you are not currently searching for a job, we're not counting you as part of the labor force. Okay, so it's really important to know, what does the government consider unemployed? So let's come back over here to our PowerPoint. This is from the older version of the book, but I just wanted you to see for comparison purposes. As of 2009, the employed category, so people who say, yes, I'm working right now, decreased to 139.9 million. People who said, not looking for a job right now and are considered not in the labor force, was 78.7 million. You can see here in 2007, as of 2009, 81.7 million. And then this pink category in the middle, people who are looking, actively searching for a job but not working yet, was 7.1 million in 2007 and increased to 14.3 in 2009, just so you could see that difference. Now, when you ask someone off the street who are the unemployed, they're thinking of the whole population, right? But the government only considers that 7-point official number out of these top two categories. They just leave out this blue box, people who are in the blue box down here. So those top two boxes, the employed and the unemployed, make up what the government calls the labor force. So people who are actively searching for a job right now and people who are working. Again, the idea is we still count them as part of the labor force if they're searching for a job, that they'll eventually find one and be working. They are considered part of what the government calls the labor force. So that 7.5%, the official unemployment number, is the people who are unemployed, officially unemployed, as a percentage of the entire labor force. Okay? So here's the formula for it. This will not be provided for you on the test, so you'll just have to know this one. People who are looking for a job divided by, and what goes in the labor force? Which two groups were you going to add in here? Again? Employed and unemployed. So that number up here that you put in the numerator also goes down here. You're going to add it with the people who are working already. And that's the unemployment rate. Okay, let's just think about this statistic. Let's say that the latest number, as we said, is 7.5%, 7.5% unemployment rate. Okay, let's say that next month they came out with a new figure, 6%. So unemployment rate has dropped from 7.5% to 6%. It sounds like good news, right? Does that necessarily mean that more people are working, though? If you're looking at the formula, what could cause that? I mean, the good news would be if people are actually working, but what could also cause this statistic to go down? If people give up looking, good, Cal. If people give up looking for a job, that's going to be less numbers here, right? Fewer numbers here and fewer numbers here. You stop looking, you're not officially unemployed anymore. That's why this formula is really important. The labor force participation rate. And this gives you an idea of how many people, have left the labor force if they're not looking anymore. Because this number takes into account, or this statistic does take into account the whole population. Okay, let's think about this statistic. When, by the way, full-time students, I know some of you all are working, but you're not counted in the labor force. So full-time students are not counted in the labor force. Okay, knowing that, when you graduate, you start looking for a job, what do you do to the labor force participation rate? Assuming that y'all are 18 already.
Make it go up.
You're going to make it go up. You're already in the if you're assuming that you're already 18, you're already in the population, you're going to enter the labor force because you're going to start looking for a job. You're going to make this whole thing go up. So what are you going to do to this statistic? The unemployment rate. It's also going to increase when you start looking for a job because you're a new entrant into the labor force. So you, once you graduate, can affect the unemployment rate too. Okay. Your author shows that there are different experiences for different groups of people. That 7.5% official unemployment rate is for the whole nation. You can look at it by city, but he's broken it down by demographic group. And he sees that different groups experience unemployment differently. Women have lower rates of participation in the labor market. African Americans and other minority groups have higher rates of unemployment compared to whites. I mean, they only have whites and blacks in here, but the census data, it's broken down by Hispanics, Asians, and you can see there's lots of differences. Your author's just saying it's not the same for everybody. It's going to be different for different groups. And teenagers are the worst off. So lower rates of labor force participation and higher rates of unemployment. So we do see some differences there. Your author also wanted to point out that there's differences in terms of women and men's participation in the labor force. So it's definitely changed a lot for women. It used to be, in terms of social attitudes, I would ask my classes, how many of you know a stay-at-home dad? And maybe one person would raise their hands. But I'm going to ask you all, how many people know a stay-at-home dad? Know of one. Okay, just one. No one else? I'm starting to see more and more people know a stay-at-home dad, and it's just a changing attitude that more and more people are okay with that. And then some other things too. We've got better technology at home to help us with chores, people having fewer kids, so that's all played a role in the labor force participation. But you can see that it has doubled by now for women, and labor force participation for men has actually dropped. It's actually dropped. And that's just a graphical representation of those trends. And here are some reasons why. Okay, more stay-at-home dads. Older men are retiring earlier and living longer, so that's why they're not participating in the labor force and not counted. And for younger men, they are staying in school longer, college and grad school, so all of those things play a role into that trend. Just a reminder, we kind of did this already when we were doing the X's on our original list. Full-time students, not counted. People who have retired, not counted. Stay-at-home parents, not counted. Discouraged workers. Remember in the DVD, he was talking to those 20-somethings on the street of Chicago, so they would be counted discouraged workers. They said, well, maybe next month they'll start working for a job. But it was also the guy in the suit with the glasses, right? Advanced degrees in engineering. He said, the job market is too hard right now, and so I'm not looking. Both of them fit into this category of discouraged worker. That means they're just were looking at one time and are not now, and are therefore not counted. Well, you all can see that's how the government counts it. It is important to understand how the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines unemployment. And you can see why people would criticize the way that we measure unemployment. And for those of, you can see on our list, we X'd out a whole bunch of people that aren't counted. And you can see why a critic of the unemployment rate would say that this understates the true picture of unemployment. Since we're not counting so many people, this way understates what's really going on. And that's because we don't count everybody in the population. We only take into account those in the labor market. Let me pick back up these questions. Can anyone think of another problem? When we're calling people at their house, and we're asking them in the past month, have you worked for pay? Have you been looking for a job? What else could go wrong here, the way that we're collecting our data? People could lie. Okay, what if they lie right here? What if they say, yeah, I have been looking for a job, but they're really not? What are they going to do to the unemployment rate? Make it go up. Okay, so people who lie right here, economists call them the phantom unemployed. Whenever I'm teaching this class in the fall, I have to tell my students I'm not making this up because it's usually around Halloween time that we're talking about this. But you can see that there could be some error that makes the unemployment rate, be higher than it's supposed to, and that's possible too. But the thought is that there's way more underestimation because we've left out all these people, the disabled, the retired, versus people who are the phantom unemployed. So we think overall net, it's still an underestimation of what's really going on. We try to address some of these problems with different measures of the unemployment rate, and I won't ask you about them, but I just want you to know on page 303 there are different unemployment rates, like U1, U2, U3, that's what they're called, the names that are given, and they try to address some of these issues, right? One other thing that I wanted to point out on here. Okay, this first question, in the past month, have you worked for pay? Okay, if you're working part-time, how are you going to answer this question? If you hate your job and you can't stand your manager, how are you going to answer this question? The way that we ask these questions and collect our data for a 7.5% unemployment rate, it doesn't take into account what's called underemployment. Okay, different than unemployment, right? So if you are not employed at your full capability, if you really, really want a full-time job, but there's not one right now, so just take a part-time job, that's all you have for right now, you are underemployed. So that's what that is. Okay, so that's what unemployment is and how we measure it. Let's talk about different types. You've seen some examples. Do you remember an example from the DVD of frictional unemployment? Yeah. Does anyone ever had a new manager come in and you just said, I cannot work here anymore? And so you just switch maybe to another restaurant or another similar line of work. If you've ever done that, you were frictionally unemployed. Or, remember at the beginning, he was interviewing all those Rutgers grads? Right when you graduate and you start looking for a job, you're going to be considered frictionally unemployed. So, just because searching for a new job takes time, that's the name that we give, regular job search. People who haven't found a job yet. Structural unemployment is different. Does anyone remember the example in the DVD? Yes, because those jobs were going over to in India, for example, if they were going to outsource. Okay, the definition of this is when the number of jobs is insufficient for the number of workers. It means maybe technology has taken away some of those jobs. We don't need that many people anymore. How many of you all use Bank of America? How many of you all have deposited a check before using your phone? And you don't even have to go to the teller anymore. I tried to deposit a check at Bank of America. I was going to the drive-thru, and it was after 3 o'clock. And nothing was open. The drive-thru was closed. The main campus was closed. And that was the one on, close to Bosque and Wooded Acres. And I thought, maybe somebody robbed the bank. Let me try to go to the one downtown. Same thing. They don't even have anything open after 3 p.m. They don't need to hire any tellers there because they now have this application where you can deposit using the ATM machine or using your own phone. So the number of jobs, the number of tellers has decreased, right, for what they need at Bank of America. They don't have anybody working after 3 p.m. So there's just not enough jobs anymore. Just like when you play musical chairs. The whole point of the game is to have fewer chairs than you have people so somebody gets out. And this is longer term unemployment. That means you don't have the skills that are being needed anymore. Or those skills are being fulfilled by maybe cheaper labor or technology. This is shorter term unemployment. You have the skills, but it just takes time to find a match. And y'all know if you're interviewing for a job, it just takes time for that whole process for you to decide that you're a good fit for that company, and for them to say you're a good match here. And for you to be reading through and applying for a job, that just takes time. So this is our economy's, there's been a structural change, and there's, the industry's changed in some way. Seasonal unemployment, they mentioned in the DVD. Do y'all remember examples of that? Yeah, the ski lift workers. Anyone ever been an outdoor lifeguard? Okay, well, we only need Santa Claus, at one time of the year, for example. Right, so that's seasonal unemployment when those workers are only needed at certain times of the year. Another type of unemployment is cyclical unemployment. Your author is a little bit different than other economists. He defines cyclical unemployment as, let me come over here and write it down for you. The sum of those first two that we were talking about, structural unemployment plus frictional unemployment. You see that word cycle in there? We're going to be talking about the business cycle, but it was mentioned in chapter 1. Sometimes our economy just goes through fluctuations of economic rise and declines. That's an A right there. And it's just naturally occurring, and so your author says that people's skills changing, and then the time it takes for people to find another job, that's all part of that natural cycle. That's what he says. Okay, so everybody's got that? Come back over here. Okay, the natural rate of unemployment or the full rate of unemployment, it's another word for that. Most economists think it should be between 4 and 6%. Why wouldn't the full rate of unemployment be 0? Why isn't our goal of what our policymakers think is okay be 0 unemployment?
It's unrealistic.
Yes, why?
Because you're always going to have people that are going to be unemployed due to whatever situation's going on. For example, disgruntled people, whatever.
Always going to have people graduating. Always people moving, right? Sometimes people move and maybe the husband's found a job and the wife's going to find a job later. So, she's going to be looking while the husband starts working right away. We're always going to have some frictional and structural, right? So what do we think is okay and natural? About 4 to 6%. Okay, Well, if some frictional and structural unemployment is always going to be there, what can we do about it in terms of public policy? So what could the government do? Well, to help with frictional unemployment, maybe try to reduce the time for the unemployed to find jobs. We've got a couple of job placement centers here in Waco even. Have y'all ever heard of ADECO or Unlimited Placement? Okay, so these are where employers go and say, this is what we need, and then people who need a job can just go to the center and then just get all the information here. So we have those kinds of places to try to reduce that time that it takes for a job search. Also, training programs, trying to get people to have, brush up on their computer skills, for example, to help them to help eliminate some structural unemployment. Also, in terms of public policy, this is always a big debate about this topic, unemployment benefits. So while people are unemployed, to give them some benefits while they're frictionally unemployed so they can find another job. Does this hurt or does this help? How many people think it's that it actually makes the problem worse when we give people unemployment benefits? Okay. How many people think that this is something that's needed for someone who's laid off unexpectedly, for them to pay the bills and find, okay. How many people think it's both? Probably both. And there are always going to be some people who are taking advantage. Certainly the incentive structure needs to be set up correctly so that, yes, we want to help people, but it would be better for them to not be relying on they'd be better off having their own income rather than the public assistance, right? If that's what we're trying to promote. And it's hard. We don't want anybody to be without, but we also want to have an incentive for them to find a job, provided that there are opportunities for them to do so. There is a case study in the book when there was a bonus for people who, a $500 bonus, and this was in Illinois. This is a study in the 80s. If they found a job faster, they would get this bonus, and they found that the group who were given or offered the bonus, they actually did find a job sooner. So the incentive structure needs to be set up correctly. Another thing in terms of public policy, we've talked about a binding price floor, and an example of that is the minimum wage. Except, what problem does a binding price floor lead to? Shortage or surplus? Surplus. A surplus. And we're talking about a surplus of labor. That means unemployment. So you've seen this graph before when we're talking about raising minimum wage. Yes, we want people to have a higher standard of living, be able to buy more things, except that when we raise minimum wage, some people tend to get cut out, left out. So L3 represented the quantity of people who were working before. Now, fewer people at LD will be working. And it tends to be teenagers and the unskilled who are part of that surplus of labor. Because that extra $2 that the government mandates, if you have to pay, we were paying people $5.15, now $7.25, that $2.10 has to come from somewhere. And sometimes it comes in the form of less hours, or we're going to have to let some people go. Okay, so we already know that a price floor can lead to a surplus of labor, but higher wages can also be caused by other things too. And your author says unions might charge efficiency wages for the people who are in their union. My brother is a musician, and he loves union gigs. Unions are more common up north than there are here. He lives in Boston because he knows he's going to get paid more than usual, and he might even get some extra benefits because he plays the bass. He gets an extra cartage fee, and that the violinists wouldn't get, or someone who plays a smaller instrument. And they have rules. If the conductor says this music sounds awful, we're going to stay here until it's right. He can't do that. He has to give them breaks at certain times. So breaks, benefits, pay, all of that is negotiated by the union. It's a separate organization that employees can join if they want to, and they'll negotiate all of these rules with the management of the orchestra. So unions can fight for higher wages that are kept above efficiency level, but and that's just what we call them, efficiency wages, when they're higher than equilibrium. Not mandated by the government, it's just the union has gotten the management to agree to pay the musicians these higher wages. But if you think about it overall, if they're paying my brother way more than usual and everybody else in the section, they could have paid every one of them less and then maybe hired another person to play. So again, with the minimum wage, if you keep your job and you're at the higher wage, that's great, you're better off. But then, someone, if you're not, if you're left out, then you lose out. Henry Ford is another example. So it wasn't from negotiation of a union, he just did it himself. He paid higher than equilibrium wages or efficiency wages voluntarily because he saw that if he paid people more, they were happier, they worked longer or worked harder for you, and they didn't quit as often. So he paid, twice the going wage. So he wanted to hire people to help him to build his Model T Ford. And there are long lines of people who wanted to get into the factory every day and work for him. Could he hire all of them? No, it was just people who were first in line. And so there were some people at the end of the line who got left out. The people who got in first, they were better off. But some people did get left out. So we can have higher than equilibrium wages because the government said so, that's minimum wage, because the union has fought for it, or voluntarily provided for by the firm that's like Henry Ford. And if the union or if it's just voluntary by the firm, those are called efficiency wages. And all of them can lead to the same result, that some people get left out, some unemployment there. Okay, I'd like you to add a couple of other things into your notes. So let me switch over here. First of all, we're going to add in the economic costs of unemployment. Arthur Oaken was an economist who found a relationship between GDP, what we have been talking about, and the unemployment rate. And he found that for every 1% of unemployment above the natural rate, by the way, what do our policymakers think is okay? What range of unemployment? Good. 46%, so for every 1% of unemployment above that, GDP actually goes down by 2%. It's more of a rule of thumb than law. It's not going to always be true. But let's say, we'll just use the upper end of our range here. Let's say that 6% is what we're okay with. So if we're experiencing 7% unemployment rate, unemployment rate of 7%. How many percentage points is that above? 1. So extra unemployment, you can think of that as 1%. So the GDP is going to go down by, according to our rule here, 2%. Okay, if it is 8% unemployment, how many extra percentage points are we over? Okay, GDP is going to decline by. We can multiply this decline by total GDP. C plus I plus G plus net exports are $14 or $15 trillion, and come up with a dollar amount of the costs of goods and services that we are not making because people are unemployed, because we've got extra unemployment that's over and above what's naturally occurring. So that was Arthur Oaken's contribution. He helped us estimate the number on the economic costs of unemployment. Then there are non-economic costs of unemployment. These are also referred to as human costs of unemployment. And you can define this as costs to individuals or society that are not easily measured in dollars. And we've been talking about statistics and numbers, but what do we see tend to happen to a society, to a country? You're seeing this in Europe right now with prolonged high unemployment. What kind of things start to happen? Say again? Rioting? Why are people rioting? They're upset. Increased crime, poverty, family breakups, depression, suicides, worse.
All this is caused by what?
Higher unemployment. Yeah. But I want to point this out because there are some costs to society when we have a lot of unemployment that aren't measured in dollars. You know, we're talking about all these statistics, but really we're talking about people's lives. If we have prolonged unemployment, these kinds of things happen. And that's why we're going to watch part of a movie next time that shows what happens to a city when there is prolonged unemployment and just how terrible it is. We can look at numbers, we can look at statistics, but when we're talking about families, the fabric of American society, it's very, very important that we do not have prolonged unemployment. We complain about our 7.5% unemployment rate. It is higher than we want it. It is bad here in our country, but places like Italy, Greece, Spain especially, higher than 25% unemployment right now. So it is much worse in those countries, and we're seeing some of these things happen over there. That is the end of chapter 15.
So if men were now stay-at-home dads, and men were making more money than women, but more women are now working, what happens to the economy? Because if men were making more money than a woman doing the same job, then the economy